Hey everyone, welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today for a brand new explainer. We are diving into a seriously groundbreaking 2026 book by Anthony Farrier called The Orchestration Advantage: Leading the Human X Machine Frontier. Think about this for a second. For a century, business management was basically built on the idea that tomorrow would look pretty much exactly like yesterday. You could sit down, make a 5-year plan, and actually stick to it. But today? Well, if you've felt lately like your long-term plans are completely obsolete the very second you write them down, believe me, you are not alone. Right now, every leader alive is being asked to conduct a piece of music that no one has ever even heard before. Surviving the AI era means you have to lead exactly like an orchestra conductor, but with sheet music that is literally changing right in front of your eyes. So let's explore how the absolute best organizations are actually pulling this off. Okay, let's dive into this with some hard data. Looking at Deloitte's 2026 Human Capital Trends research, a staggering 88% of leaders say that accelerating the orchestration of their people, skills, and resources is either very or extremely important to their future. They know for a fact that competitive advantage doesn't depend on what you own anymore. It depends entirely on how fast you can steer your intent into actual action. But here is the jaw-dropping contrast. A mere 7% of those exact same leaders report that their organization has actually achieved mastery in making progress toward that goal. Just think about that drop-off for a second. Absolutely everyone knows they need to be doing this, but almost nobody feels they're actually any good at it. So do the math there. That leaves us with an 81-point gap between the 88% who know it's crucial and the 7% who can actually pull it off. I really want you to absorb the weight of that number. This 81-point mastery gap, it is the absolute largest gap reported in the entire 2026 survey. It completely dwarfs previous waves of disruption, like digital transformation or even DEI maturity. What this proves, without a doubt, is that our legacy business models, the ones built entirely on accumulating scale and defending market share by just being massive, they're failing. In a market that relentlessly demands speed, scale has quietly turned into a giant, slow-moving liability. To actually close that massive gap, we have to fundamentally shift our mindset from what we call allocation to orchestration. In the legacy era, leaders were all about allocation. They rigidly assigned a person to a fixed role with a fixed plan and basically expected them to stay put for years. But modern orchestration, that requires continuous, fluid adjustment. It relies on 4 main shifts: defining your capability around live, real-world missions rather than some fixed org chart, pushing real-time decision-making all the way to the edges of the company, creating these modular, plug-and-play human AI teams, and using AI to continuously sense and respond to the market. Think about how this impacts talent for a minute. Traditionally, bringing in talent has always relied on this completely linear decision tree known as the 3 Bs. You can build internal talent by training the people you already have. You can borrow external expertise for short, episodic needs, like contractors, or you can buy permanent hires for your core capabilities. It's the classic corporate strategy, right? Train, rent, or poach. Very straightforward, very linear. But orchestration introduces a completely revolutionary 4th B, the bot. We are talking about deploying AI agents as literal digital workers. And guys, this isn't science fiction anymore. Right now, 56% of leaders are actively evaluating bots as actual team members in their workforce planning. The beauty of the bot is that by taking over that routine cognitive load, it frees up an immense amount of human capacity. Imagine having a team member who handles all the tedious data crunching, freeing you up to actually focus on deep strategy and building relationships. It isn't just an addition to your team. It's an exponential multiplier for those other 3 Bs. Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark difference between simply adding AI and multiplying with it. Right now, a whopping 59% of companies are completely failing to realize AI's value because they're stuck in a tech-focused mindset. They're doing human plus machine, basically just slapping a shiny new tool onto an old, unchanged process. But true competitive advantage, that comes from human times machine, multiplication. This means totally redesigning the workflow, shifting the decision rights, and figuring out the trust thresholds around what becomes possible when a human and a machine tackle a problem together from scratch. If you want to see exactly what that multiplication looks like out in the wild, check out this benchmark from a leading European telecommunications company. They ran 2 parallel AI rollouts. One was just a standard tech-only rollout, and it yielded a measly 5% productivity lift. Not great. The other rollout, they dedicated a massive 90% of their budget specifically to redesigning the interactions and workflows, rather than just throwing money at the software. The result was a 30% productivity lift. That is a staggering six-fold difference, driven entirely by redesigning how humans and AI interact, rather than just buying the tech and hoping for the best. But, you know, getting that incredible 6 times multiplier doesn't just happen by accident. It takes intentional scaffolding. You have to design 2 layers at the exact same time. First, you need hardwiring. This means establishing really clear formal escalation protocols, like the exact rules for when a task shifts from the AI back to a human. The second layer is soft wiring, which is all about cultivating the leadership behaviors that build psychological safety. Because think about it, if you hardwire without soft wiring, you just get a rigid rulebook that nobody trusts. But if you softwire without hardwiring, you get a team that gets along great but operates in total chaos. And honestly, to make any of this work, we have to absolutely tear down those traditional functional silos. Historically, departments like HR, IT, and finance were built for specialized efficiency. But Today, they often just mean your new project is going to take 3 months just to get approved. If you really want to orchestrate at scale, you have to break those departments apart and reorganize around 2 things. Shared run-the-business processes, which are your repeatable, automated tasks, and cross-functional grow-the-business scenarios, where teams fluidly recombine their expertise on demand to solve live missions. And we're already seeing the heavy hitters execute this shift. Take Moderna. They essentially merged HR and IT under a single leader just so they could smoothly deploy 3,000 tailored versions of ChatGPT across their entire workforce. Meanwhile, Unilever took a different route in early 2025. They drastically expanded their CFO's mandate to actually include IT and the supply chain. What these companies are doing is consolidating decision rights around specific missions, rather than keeping them trapped in rigid, slow-moving departments. Which brings us to what I like to call a massive opportunity gap: clean job architecture. Right now, only 15% of organizations are using AI-powered digital twins. Basically, these are virtual simulations of an entire organization that let you test how to reconfigure your workforce before you do it in real life. Yet 49% of leaders say these digital twins will be absolutely critical within the next 3 years. Creating a clean job architecture means stripping away those rigid, outdated job titles and looking closely at the fluid underlying tasks that can actually be reassembled as things change on the fly. But here is the really frustrating part. A massive 62% of leaders admit they find it easier to just go out and buy external talent than to reorganize their own internal teams. I mean, that is a huge, incredibly expensive missed opportunity. The organizations that are going to dominate the market are the ones willing to do the hard work of breaking down those internal walls, rather than constantly defaulting to just buying their way out of a problem. For a really brilliant success story here, look at Highmark Health. They created a dedicated workforce innovation team, and what they did was systematically and very transparently deconstruct their traditional nursing and customer service roles into discrete, cross-functional tasks. By doing this collaboratively with their staff, they didn't just find efficiency. They proved that when you actually bring your people into the redesign process, you don't just gain speed, you build the foundational trust needed for true orchestration. You can totally reconfigure your internal capability without alienating people who make it run. Now, trust is absolutely vital here because, and let's be real, innovation isn't something you can just mandate from the corner office. Let's look at the hard science for a second. Cuspiano's 2026 research mathematically proved, with a beta of 0.573, that leadership drives innovation indirectly. Actually, let me repeat that because it's so important. You cannot mandate innovation from the top down. You can only shape a culture where innovation is naturally allowed to happen. And the rest of the recent research backs this up beautifully. For instance, Fine's work shows that psychological safety isn't just a one-time workshop you do on a Friday. It has to be maintained dynamically every single day. Al-Mansour proved that investing in people development directly boosts process innovation, even in heavy industries like oil and gas. And across the board, highly flexible, fast-moving adhocracy cultures completely crush rigid, hierarchical ones when it comes to pulling off digital transformation. So what happens when you ignore that cultural foundation? Well, you accumulate something incredibly dangerous called cultural debt. This is the compounding gap that opens up when the technology you deploy outpaces the human capability and the trust you've built to actually use it. Just like financial debt, cultural debt compounds quietly in the background. If you keep buying shiny new AI tools but you don't redesign the workflows to accommodate them, the interest on that cultural debt is eventually going to bankrupt your entire transformation effort. Right, so how do we actually mitigate this debt and stop those endless functional turf wars? There are three vital strategies. First, give your leaders safe spaces. They need to know that redesigning their department doesn't mean they're going to lose their job. Second, embrace constructive friction. Invite functions like legal and finance into the process early as true partners, not just the Department of No. And finally, treat innovation as continuous resilience. It is not a finite project with an end date, it's a permanent, ongoing operating discipline. So the crucial point is, those static, backward-looking annual performance reviews, they are officially dead. If you're reconfiguring your teams every single quarter, you need continuous real-time metrics. You need a KPI chain. It starts with input, which is your talent quality. That feeds into your process, which you measure by time to innovation. That generates output, meaning revenue from new products. And finally, that justifies the business metric, which is the actual ROI. If you're going to your board to ask for money to redesign workflows, this is exactly the chain of logic you need to show them to prove the payoff. Okay, I promised you some highly actionable steps, and here is your exact playbook for Monday morning. Step 1, run an innovation audit. Map out your actual underlying skills against a 3-year roadmap and completely ignore those old, dusty job descriptions. Step 2, make a strategic budget allocation. Dedicate 3 to 5% of your HR budget specifically to workflow redesign, not just buying new tech. Step 3, scale safety. Launch cross-functional sharing and psychological safety pilots with at least 20% of your teams. You can literally start doing this right away. Ultimately, the organizations that are going to win this next decade won't necessarily be the ones with the biggest headcount or even the flashiest AI. They're going to be the ones led by true conductors. You see, unpredictability is no longer a risk you need to mitigate. It is an incredible opportunity just waiting to be harvested. The sheet music is changing in real time, the orchestra is waiting, and that massive 81-point mastery gap is entirely yours to conquer. The score keeps changing. Are you ready to pick up the baton?